Welcome to the Long COVID podcast with me, Jackie Baxter. I am really excited to bring you today's episode. Please do check out the links in the show notes where you can find the podcast website, social media and support group, as well as a link to buy me a coffee if you are able. You should not rely on any medical information contained in this podcast and related materials in making medical, health-related or other decisions. Please do consult a doctor or other health professional. I love to hear from you. If you've got any suggestions or feedback or just want to say hey, then please do get in touch. I really hope you enjoy this episode, so here we go. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Long COVID podcast. I am delighted to be joined today by Alisha, who's here to share her recovery story. So I love recovery stories. I'm so excited to hear what Alisha's journey was, what worked, what didn't, and yeah. So a very warm welcome to the podcast today. It's so lovely to meet you.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to chat and share my story.
Yeah. So before we get into all of that, can you just say a little bit about yourself and maybe what life was like before you became unwell?
Sure. Um, so I live in the mountains and I've lived in the mountains for a while now. And so my whole adult life has been pretty active. I love to hike and walk and run. I was a pretty big runner before I got sick, which I still run now, but um, I was never competitive or anything. I just enjoy running, and I started working on a organic vegetable farm right after I graduated college 10 years ago and fell in love with that. And so for 8 full seasons, I worked manual labor on farms. So I was very, active job, 40 hours a week. And sometimes I would still go, run or bike after working outside all day. Um, so a very active lifestyle, just loving to be outside. And yeah, I think that's about it. I loved yoga and all of the things. And um, then I got COVID in 2020. So that's when things shifted.
I can totally relate to a lot of what you were saying about, the outside just being a part of your life that you can't imagine it not being part of your life kind of thing. Um, and then yeah, obviously everything went a bit wrong. um, or took a side quest, let's say. So what did that kind of initial illness kind of look like for you, and how did that then move into what then became long COVID? Although you didn't know that at the time, presumably.
Yes. So I had finished working on a farm, and I moved across the country in actually 2019. And that really started just life stress, um, not knowingly that that would be my journey, but moving, finding a new job, meeting new people, all of those things. And I did actually really love where I left. So it was also hard for in that aspect. And so then the pandemic hit not too long after I moved. So just a lot of changes and, life stress and new relationships, ending relationships, all of that. Um, and so in 2020, I got COVID for the first time, right after moving in with someone new again. There was a lot of moves in that year and a half. And so that was really hard I was in a new relationship in a new home, and in 2 weeks after moving in, I got COVID. And I was very sick the first time. I just with all the COVID things. I was sick for about a month, and then then I it took me about a month to heal what I thought was healing. And so I went back to a farm job, and that for about a whole summer, so almost a year, I experienced extreme anxiety for the first time in my life. I had, heart palpitations and shortness of breath and just really not understanding what was going on. Like I felt like I healed, but then I knew something was off since I had COVID, and I definitely started um, being obsessed with the sensations, obsessed and worried, I guess. And my partner had it with me, and I kept asking him, like, "Are you fine? Do you feel the same after COVID?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I had it and it's gone." So, working on a farm was really hard for the first time ever. I love working outside on the farm, and I honestly hated it. I really didn't like going to work. I was scared of the sun. I was scared of being hot. Felt like I was going to pass out all the time. And so I did go to the doctor just to get like a regular checkup during that time, and nothing was off. So I felt very confused why I felt so off. And there was days that I had to leave work because I just didn't feel well. A few times I came home and had a panic attack. I had like my first panic attacks I've ever had. And so just life was hard because I was pretty much just living in fear of sensations and extreme anxiety. And so I was doing things through that year. Um, Outwardly, I looked fine, but I was not fine on the inside. So I did start things like seeing a counselor, doing work for anxiety, and just none of that really helped that much because I still had that underlying belief that something was very wrong, I think, feeding that fear. And so then I got COVID a second time in 2021. Um, and that is what led me to live on the couch for a year and a half. So the second time getting COVID, I was again pretty sick, but it was like my body shut down that second time. And that's what led to, at least 15 symptoms. I had extreme fatigue, extreme anxiety, and then I developed a lot of stomach issues, just everything like bloating, constipation, um, burning, tingling, dizziness. It was just like, I lived on the couch because I really could not do anything. And that's so for about a month, I was that sick. And then I realized I needed help. So that started the journey of going to the doctors. And I did actually start off with a functional medicine doctor since just the regular doctor in the past said nothing was wrong. So that led to like all of the tests, and pretty much nothing was wrong. Some of my, levels were a little off. Like I did go on some hormone supplements and stuff, which probably helped regulate things, but that also started a big supplement routine. Like I went home with 20 supplements like the first day. And gosh, that journey was rough, to be honest. So that whole thing was stressful because there was really no answer. It was just like, you need to take all this stuff to fix all these things. And I was completely confused. I still was, like on board. Like, okay, if he's telling me to do this, I'm going to do this to heal. So there was like moments of thinking this is it. But that lasted for maybe 6 months, and I felt just awful the whole time and confused. And then I got tested for Lyme's. And so basically that functional medicine doctor told me that could have long COVID or I could have Lyme's. And so that was really confusing also and scary because every time I went to the doctor, he would say, I'm not sure if I should treat you for Lyme's or long COVID. And it was just this big confusing thing. And scary there's lots of fear out there about both. At one point I thought I had both. So I thought I was battling Lyme's and long COVID for a long time. So, then we did all, continual routines for all of that. And then I did all this gut testing and focused on the gut. And basically, at a certain point, I realized the doctor wasn't helping. So I went to another doctor. And that doctor then told me I also needed to, I also had Epstein-Barr, um, heavy metals, mold. Like basically, I needed to detox from like everything you can think of and parasites, if I didn't say that already. So I started with her and did a whole new detox thing to get rid of everything I just listed plus more. And I really didn't see much improvements. I think I had like moments of hope, through that journey because you want to believe in what you're doing. And so I did that detox program for about a year. And then through that whole time, I was couchbound, still not functional in life, experiencing all the sensations and fear. And my turning point was when I first heard Dan Buglio on Raylan's channel, and I started following him. And I read Dr. Sarno's book, The Mind Body Prescription. And what got my attention was Dan Buglio talking about people with chronic fatigue syndrome being able to do like a certain amount of exercise, but then not being able to do like this other thing. So kind of like pointing out kind of like that mind-body connection. So I realized I had little things like I would not feel well if I walked up my stairs, but then if I walked like to this certain part in my yard, I felt fine. And so that started getting like my mind thinking about that side. So from there, I continued the detox supplements, doctor stuff, but then really started to dive into the mind body work and slowly went off the supplements, slowly stopped the doctor stuff, and then just continued the mind body work of really calming my nervous system. I can go into that next of what I actually did, but that piece is what brought me calmness and helped me to heal.
Yeah, and it sounds like that whole kind of period up until that point. I think you said the word confused quite a few times. And I'm thinking, like, yeah, in that moment or many series of moments as you're going through that, we don't understand what's going on with our body. Because how could we? We've never experienced anything like this before. We're not taught this stuff in school. Our doctors don't understand it. So we're totally confused. We don't understand what's going on. The symptoms and the experiences that we're having are really scary. Some of them, none of them are comfortable, but some of them are downright terrifying. And then we, often have anxiety kind of on top of that, which is very understandable, but not helpful. And, the whole experience is absolutely terrifying. And it's kind of compounded by this not knowing, not understanding, worrying about the future, no one being able to help. And you said as well, that you might have looked okay on the outside, but and I think that's one of I don't know, it's one of the main struggles, but it's certainly one of the things that makes it very difficult to connect with others during this journey, is that you do look fine a lot of the time. You look relatively normal. Um, but you people don't see you on your worst days. But also, the illness is not very obviously visible. And I think, that is one of the things that makes it so difficult for people to understand it if they haven't had that experience. So I think, that whole experience that you had obviously is very personal to you, but I think a lot of people will be able to relate to so many bits of what you were saying, whether it's symptoms or experiences or how you were feeling kind of as you went through. Um, and, it sounded like almost every time you went to a doctor, you picked up a new diagnosis, which, must have been, we can sort of laugh about it now, but at the time it must have just been so overwhelming.
Hmm.
So, yeah, you said that you sort of started to discover, this whole other world almost, isn't it? And it's it's quite a mindset shift, or quite a shift of more than just mindset, isn't it? From the traditional medical model, let's call it, um, to things like the nervous system that we don't get taught about, that people don't understand, and like, why is it that it's 2025 and regular doctors don't know this stuff? I mean, a lot of them do, but so many of them don't. Um, so I'd love to hear a bit more about how you sort of started exploring that world, and what it was that sort of started to actually help you. Because it sounded like up until that point, you'd been doing all this stuff and it hadn't really made any difference.
Yes, and I'll just reiterate that that confusion and fear just kind of loops into itself, you know, yeah, all the way up until I discovered this mind body work. And so I will say that before I found the mind body work specifically, I did start to really take a deep dive within, and I journaled a ton. But I also am a journaler anyways. I just love to journal. It helps me. So I like journaled my heart out through that journey. I also did like energy work and emotional work and, counseling. And so for me, a big shift in learning about the mind body work. Also, I listened to Rebecca Tolan, and she really helped me. Her story helped me so much, and the recovery stories. And so the shift that began to help was believing that I was not broken. Because when you're in those moments of feeling these awful sensations and you're thinking that all this stuff might be wrong with you, that's scary. But if you're able to realize, oh, actually nothing's wrong, just that shift began to calm my nervous system. And so from there, it's definitely a journey to, it's a big journey to make all of those shifts, but some specific tools that helped me. First of all, was Rebecca Tolan's somatic tracking meditation. And so I started to do that every day, and it really helped me in extreme times of discomfort to hear her calming voice telling me that I'm safe in that moment. And so the somatic tracking for me helped me to stop and breathe and really be with the sensations. And so being with the sensations as they're happening and starting to believe that you're safe in those moments, you know, that just is a huge shift. I am a mind body coach now, and I really try to tell my clients that all of those moments count. Like if you when I just did the somatic tracking for, the 10 minutes and I started to feel safe in that moment, all of those shifts are, what build on each other. And so also I did a lot of calming meditations. And for me, I loved them. And so, I think that through these journeys, finding anything that brings you calmness is, whatever makes you feel calm. And so, like, I felt the best during the meditations because it brought me so much calmness. So I did a lot of guided meditations, and I also became certified in Reiki. And that was a mix of, so began self-Reiki, and for me, that was extremely calming also. I had, I would do like 2 hours a day of self-Reiki.
Oh,
Yeah, it's amazing to think about now because I don't do 2 hours a day now. But it was so calming, and also being in the course of Reiki, like I did an online course for 3 different levels and some other just energy work, continuing education. And it was so fascinating to me. And so that was the first thing that I started to focus on, other than, even though Reiki is for your health, I was really more just interested in the energy, learning about it all. I wasn't doing it to fix myself. So for me, it was my first thing that brought me joy and shifted my mind to some other interest and engaged my mind in something besides obsessing about my health. So that was a big thing to also. I also read a ton. I started to read just to learn, and storybooks, just bringing other things in and then, um, thinking about my health. And so then, kind of with that, was also bringing in joy again. And so I share a lot that Dan Buglio has a nice video of 24 things to create feelings of safety. And one of those is to smile. And I really started making myself smile because I hadn't smiled in so long, like, and it felt extremely ungenuine the first time I smiled. So I, like, secretly would make myself smile when I was alone. I'd just smile. And it really, I mean, it makes a difference. It makes you feel a little bit better. And so, yeah, started to, watch things that brought me joy. So the joy, in itself and engaging in tasks brought my brain into engaging into something which teaches you that you're safe versus that fear loop that happens through that journey. Um, so yeah, like I said, those are a lot of the tools, and it was a lot of patience, a lot of self-love. And one more piece of through that journey is learning that I'm an empath. And so I read some books about being an empath, and I learned a lot about setting boundaries, saying no. Um, I mean, setting boundaries was a huge piece through my journey and is now also continued through my life. And I have much stronger boundaries now and much more self-time. Yeah, self-love and self-compassion through that journey is a big piece also.
we'll be right back. I'm interrupting myself for a second to tell you about long COVID breathing. The fabulous Vicky Jones and I have teamed up to bring you long COVID breathing. We are both passionate about sharing our expertise and experience of the breath and how incredibly helpful that can be with long COVID. We've worked together to develop a course that is specifically tailored to those with long COVID. It's a 6-week course with 12 sessions, all delivered online. The community feel and learning that we're all sharing is such a joy. To find out more information and to sign up for our courses, workshops and other shorter sessions, please check out the link below, longcovidbreathing.com, or email longcovidbreathing@gmail.com to start your breathing journey with us. Yeah, and I can so much relate to what you were saying about boundaries. I had never said no to anything in my life,
Hmm.
I don't think.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
suddenly long COVID comes along and you kind of have to say no, but you still kind of force yourself to say yes. And I remember the first time that I genuinely said no to something, sort of post recovery, it was like, I could, but I don't wanna. So I'm gonna say no. It felt so liberating.
Yes.
Um, Isn't it amazing that we have never, this is so common, that sort of tendency to say yes to things, without really considering whether you actually really genuinely want to, or maybe more importantly, if you actually have the capacity to take it on, whether you're unwell or not. Um, but yeah, I mean, I love so much about what you were saying, that idea of I'm not broken, I'm just dysfunctional. And that is huge, isn't it? Because I think, we do feel like we're broken, because, well, of course I'm broken, nothing works.
Hmm.
But it's that kind of idea of, okay, it's not, um, broken suggests kind of permanence, doesn't it? Whereas
Hmm.
dysfunctional suggests, you know, not permanence, whatever the word for that is. And that actually there are things that we can do. And, even those little things, I mean, you mentioned smiling, there is precious little to smile about when you're in the middle of this, because it is the worst experience, certainly, that I have ever had in my life. And I think, many people will feel the same. So, okay, what on earth is there to smile about? But actually, those little things, even though, as you say, they feel really ridiculous to start with, they do help. And it's finding the ones that work for you. Okay, maybe smiling doesn't work. Okay, what can you do? Those little tiny things. And the little tiny things, they add up. Like you said, everything counts. So every time you do one of those little things, it is starting to help, even if it doesn't feel like it at the time. And I think, that's what I talk about with people so often. It's consistency. It's not that you've got to do those big things. It's consistently doing the little things that's going to really add up. Because we got to work within our own capacity. If we push too hard, then that gives the opposite effect to our body, doesn't it? It gives us unsafety rather than safety. So it's making it work for us and us as individuals, isn't it? So it sounds like you've learned many of the same lessons that I did, although maybe in a slightly different way. Um, and kind of similar to me as well, it sounds like it's really unleashed this curiosity in you, where you were sort of learning for the sake of learning, only
Hmm.
to find that actually it was helping you, which
Hmm.
I absolutely love.
Hmm.
So, you found all these things that were sort of gradually adding up.
Hmm.
Um, how did the sort of trajectory towards that full recovery happen for you? Was it like a light bulb, or was it more of a kind of slow burn? And what did that kind of moment look like for you?
Hmm. Yes, I had a lot of light bulb moments, and they were all small light bulb moments. There was not one magic. Um,
Fairy lights.
yes. So, when I first learned about the mind body work and that I'm not broken, it took me a year to fully heal. And so that looked like we were talking about, definitely very small consistency every day, just of any of the tools. And I really did allow myself to have time, which was very hard. Of course, there's pressure to go back to work. There's pressure to be in society again. And yes, going back just for a moment to when I first got sick, I I realized I had to say no to people. I had to stop. Like I had to just stop everything. And I even stopped talking to people on the phone because that was too much for me. And so it was a journey from needing to say no and then, yes, realizing that it's safe to say no as I heal, because even that, like as I healed and began to slowly do things again, knowing that I could say no and that I can listen to my needs helped me to feel safe. So boundaries, boundaries definitely create safety. Um, so, there was lots of up and downs through that journey. There was days that I felt completely awful still after I learned everything I learned. But those days that I felt awful, I did the best that I could to create feelings of safety in those days. And so, I didn't Google anymore. I wasn't researching anymore what was happening to me. I wasn't searching anymore for how to fix. And that's a big shift. Um, so I, believed as much as I could in the work that I'm not broken. And also, if someone hasn't heard about TMS mind body work, it essentially means that your brain, is creating the pain, and the pain is completely real. But since the brain is sending the signals through the nervous system, that also means that you're not, like, nothing is physically wrong. So, there was days that I doubted that. I definitely had doubts, but I just continued with that safety. Whatever made me feel safe in those really awful days, I did. And so, past that, when I started to have more good days, I really reintroduced activities quite slowly. And I surrounded those activities with lots of joy and gratitude. So I remember the first time I walked into my garden again. I'm pretty sure I had not walked into my garden in 2 full years, which it's literally 15 steps out of my front door. So, I started just reintroducing things and teaching myself that I was safe to do them. So I would walk for 1 minute. I would walk into my garden. I started to practice yoga literally for 5 minutes. And so all of these very small reintroducing activities, I just went so slow because I wanted to teach myself that I was safe. And also in that slow reintroduction, I let go of pressure. And that was a practice of letting go of perfectionism. So, in the past, I would not allow myself to stop running if I didn't hit the hour mark. Like I had to run an hour. And now, I had to walk 1 minute. There was no have tos. I just allowed myself whatever I could do that day was going to be exciting, and I was going to know I was okay doing that thing. And so letting go of that perfectionism and learning to love myself in those moments was also a big piece of the transformation because I mean that's a big shift to know that I'm lovable when I'm laying on the couch or just walking outside versus, you know, the mindset in the past of I'm lovable because I'm perfect because I did all of these exercises today. So that was a big piece through the journey. And so then moving forward through that slow reintroduction, that continued to build where, I went out to a restaurant for the first time again, would see humans again for the first time. And then again, through that, as I would reintroduce something a little bit bigger, like for me, seeing people was hard. So when I first saw people again, I did experience sensations and that were uncomfortable in my body when I first did things. But so that was again the practice of knowing I was safe with those sensations, and creating as much feelings of safety around that as I could. And through that continual reinforcement of anything that made me feel safe and calm as I reintroduced everything, slowly, slowly the sensations started to fade. And so it was, it happened gradually and they slowly, to answer your question of when I was fully healed, um, it was the summertime, and it was also, I will say, I started to say that I was healed also. And I would say maybe I was 70, 80%. And I would just say, yeah, I'm good. I'm good to go. I'm okay. Just to like have that confidence of I am good. So then I guess one more piece of the final healing stage was that I heard Rob Ensor on he has a recovery story on Dan Buglio's channel, and he is a TMS coach. Um, and I saw him for one session. I was like back doing things. I was, um, you know, pretty well functioning, but I still had a lot of gut issues. And I still had this feeling of a detox reaction in my body. That's what I called it. It was like body sensations of burning after I did an activity. And so I saw him and explained to him where I was at. And he basically just reinforced that actually I was safe and those sensations are also from the nervous, like from the brain. And from that time, I did not have those detox reactions anymore. And so that is amazing. That is one pretty big light bulb switch. I went on my first date again out in public, like I think the next day. And I just knew I was fine after talking to him. And that is when I said I was fully healed.
We'll be right back.
Hey there, I'm just jumping in for a second to see if you're enjoying this episode. If you're finding it useful, maybe you would consider sharing it somewhere, a friend, a group, or even on your Twitter feed. If everyone was able to share just once, we'd be able to get this information out to even more people who really, really need it. So please consider sharing somewhere if you possibly can. I hope you enjoy the episode, and thank you so much.
Amazing. I love that. Like, I just went on a date and I
Mhm.
realized it was good. Like,
Yeah.
isn't that such a cool way to kind of celebrate, I suppose? Um, and I think, everyone has their own take on this and their own recovery moment story or whatever what you want to call it. Um, but I think everyone kind of marks it in some way. It's that mountaintop moment, isn't it? You did it. You got there. Um, and it's almost like after that when you maybe, certainly for me, sort of processed what that actually meant. Um, but that's the journey continues, right? Um, but it's such a beautiful moment. So you went on your date. You announced that, okay, I'm there, I did it. I'm fully recovered. What does life look like now?
hmm Yes, now life is very beautiful. I love life pretty much every day. But with that, I will say I have ups and downs as a human being. And I feel much more accepting of those ups and downs. But that just meaning, regular life stuff. So now I am a coach. So I coach 4 days a week, mind body coach, and I do love that a lot. I'm grateful, for all of my clients and being able to share what I've learned. And I also work on a farm again part-time. So now I just do about usually 1 day a week, which is also really exciting because I did think that I would never farm again. Um, and I hike and walk and run and do all of the active things. But I also rest more than I used to. But because I say we're humans and we need to rest because yeah, just a normal amount. I allow myself to rest if I need to rest. I have boundaries. I still do meditations. So, things have carried through that I learned, but none of them are tools for fixing. They're just I enjoy meditating. I enjoy the balance of running, walking, and resting. And I feel, I feel very much more in touch with myself through this journey. Like you were mentioning, when people ask me to do something, I say, I'll let you know tomorrow. And I take a moment to feel if I want to do that thing. So boundaries are huge. And also still remind myself that to bring in joy every day. It's easy to get caught back up in regular life stuff and stress of life, but bringing that joy in is important. So yeah, very full, balanced life, and I'm really grateful for that balance now.
Yeah, I think my word is balance.
Hmm.
Because, I think it was important to me, exercise has always been a really big part of my life, and I couldn't imagine a life where it wasn't. And I think for me that was one of the toughest things of the experience, was that I didn't know if I would ever be able to climb a mountain again, or run or cycle, or, do all these things that are really important to me. Kind of like you were saying, that being out in the mountains, farming, these are things that make you you. Um, so it's really important to me that I'm able to push myself, and really, sort of kick the arse out of myself, doing really intense exercise, big stuff. And I love doing that. And, I'm so grateful that I'm able to do that stuff again. But the other side of that coin is that you have to respect your body and that balance. So it's like, yes, climb the mountain, but then go sit on the beach. Um, and it's having that balance in your life, isn't it? And the same with work. Sure, have the crazy week, but then have the restful weekend kind of thing. And it's respect for the body and that balance in my life that I now have, that I didn't before, because I didn't understand the need for it. I didn't, I thought I was invincible. um, and you sort of do, don't you? Because you don't have any reason to not believe that. Um, so I love what you were saying about the ups and downs of life, because they do, life happens, stressful things come along, and what's important is that we have the resilience to deal with them, and the tools, and that is, I suppose, one of the, you could say, gifts or learnings or silver linings maybe of this experience, is that now you are a more resilient person and you have a more resilient nervous system. It's a shame we had to go through this awful experience in order to get there, but it is something to take from it for sure. Um, so I suppose just finally, what would you say either to yourself or to someone else that is sort of still in the middle of that journey?
Hmm.
Um, what advice might you have wanted to know?
Well, first, my mind goes to, wherever you're at, or looking back at myself through like that decision making time that feels so stressful. I just encourage whatever route you take to ask yourself if that person, the doctor, the decision feels loving and supportive. Because, you know, even though one of the doctors that I was with, I didn't, the actual detox stuff didn't help. That doctor was so loving and supportive, and she helped me in a certain way because she was actually loving and supportive. So I just really encourage, through maybe the confusion of decision making, to just check in with yourself and ask if it feels loving and supportive. And then, kind of similarly, I would tell my past self and anyone going through any chronic illness that wherever you're at in the moment, you're completely lovable, like right now. And that was, I needed to hear that and start to believe that, because no matter what you can or can't do and wherever you're at, you're completely lovable right now.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful advice. And, this idea that productivity is tied to worth is
Hmm.
like it's the rubbish that society tells us. It is not
Yes.
true.
Yes.
You are lovable, whoever you are, whatever you're able to do, and however much you quote unquote contribute to society.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think that's one of the things that I had to learn. And
Hmm.
I think it's a great learning.
Yes.
Alicia, thank you so much. It has been so lovely chatting to you and wonderful hearing your story. I'm so happy that you're able to farm again and that you're back up in the hills.
Yes.
And I will share all of those links that you've mentioned in the show notes as well. So if anyone wants to connect with you or check out any of the things that you've mentioned, then go and check that out below. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much to all of my guests and to you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, or at least found it useful. The Long COVID podcast is entirely self-produced and self-funded. I'm doing all of this myself. If you're able to, please go to buymeacoffee.com/longcovidpod to help me cover the costs of hosting the podcast. Please look out for the next episode of the Long COVID podcast. It's available on all the usual podcast hosting things. And do get in touch. I'd love to hear from you.